She was only 9 years old. The first time her mother called her a mistake loud enough for the neighbors to hear. That day, Amara learned that some wounds don't bleed on the skin, they bleed inside the heart. From then on, home became a battlefield she never volunteered for. Her father barely spoke to her unless he needed someone to blame. Her mother saw her as a burden she had been tricked into raising. Her older siblings laughed behind her back, calling her the extra luggage God mistakenly added. Amara grew up in a house full of people, yet she had never felt more alone. Breakfast was always the same, her family talking and laughing on one side of the table while she sat on the other side, like a visitor in her own home. If she reached for food, someone complained she was eating too much. If she stayed silent, they said she was acting proud. And when she cried, they reminded her loudly that crying has never changed anything. Her heart learned silence before it learned joy. At school, she spoke little out of fear she would annoy someone. When teachers asked her questions, she apologized before answering. She apologized even when she didn't know what she had done. People thought she was shy, but the truth was simpler. Amara had been trained to shrink. One afternoon, after scoring the highest in her class, she rushed home with her report sheet, just hoping that this time she would hear, "Well done." Instead, her mother glanced at the paper and said, "Do you want me to clap for you? Does intelligence cook food or pay rent?" Her father didn't even look up from his phone. That night, Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what it would be like to be held, praised, or even noticed. Her chest ached in a way she had no words for. She wasn't hungry, but she felt hollow. She wasn't cold, but she shivered. And then, one day, everything shifted. She was walking home from school when she noticed the elderly woman who sold oranges by the junction struggling with her stool. Without thinking, Amara ran to help her. The woman smiled, a real smile, warm and gentle, something Amara had never received at home. "Thank you, my child," the woman said, petting her head softly. That simple touch felt like sunlight on frozen skin. Amara froze, not because she was scared, but because she didn't know kindness could sound like that. She didn't know love could look like something that small. She didn't know a stranger could speak to her like she mattered. And that moment became the beginning, because for the first time in her life, Amara felt seen. The orange seller began saving the sweetest fruits for her. The tailor down the street waved at her every morning. The bus conductor, who usually shouted at everyone, gently told her, "Come, sit here, small madam," whenever she boarded. Even the grumpy security guard at school softened whenever she greeted him. Piece by piece, stranger by stranger, Amara discovered something she had never known. Love was not limited to where you were born. Sometimes it lived in unexpected hands, hands that gave without asking, hands that cared without condition. And slowly, quietly, the little girl who grew up unseen began to bloom in places her own family thought were too small to matter. But destiny was not done with her yet. Because one day, someone would appear who would change the meaning of family for Amara forever.
Years passed, and Amara grew from a frightened girl into a young woman who carried her pain quietly, like a secret folded inside her chest. Her family remained the same: cold voices, sharp words, and hearts too hardened to notice the daughter fading in front of them. They never asked how she was coping. They never asked if she ate. They never asked why she often cried herself to sleep. To them, she was background noise, useful only when chores needed doing. But outside the house, life kept surprising her. One rainy afternoon, Amara rushed into a small bookshop to escape the storm. There, she met someone who would unknowingly reshape her world, a woman named Miss Liora.
Miss Liora was in her late 40s, with soft eyes and the kind of smile that felt like medicine. She owned the shop and spent her days recommending stories to anyone who walked in. When she saw Amara dripping wet, she didn't frown or scold her. Instead, she hurried over, wrapped a clean towel around Amara's shoulders and said, "You'll catch a fever if you stand there shivering. Come sit, the rain will pass." No one had ever spoken to Amara with that kind of concern before. She sat hesitantly, waiting to be shouted out or pushed away. But Miss Liora simply poured her warm tea and placed a book in her hands. "You look like someone who carries heavy thoughts," she said gently. "This book helped me when I was younger. Maybe it will help you too." Amara didn't understand why tears suddenly filled her eyes. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe it was the realization that kindness had found her again in another stranger's hands.
That day marks the beginning of a friendship she never knew she needed. Amara began visiting the bookshop every afternoon after school. Miss Liora noticed the way she flinched at loud noises. She noticed the way she apologized before speaking. She noticed how hungry Amara looked sometimes, how her eyes darted around like she expected to be punished. And slowly, gently, she began teaching Amara lessons no one at home had ever taught her. That her voice mattered, that she deserved softness, that she was not a mistake, that love wasn't something she had to earn through pain. Sometimes, Miss Liora would place a hand on Amara's shoulder and say, "You are not hard to love, my dear. You are just surrounded by the wrong teachers." Those words lodged themselves deep inside Amara, like forgotten seeds finally touching water. But the more she changed, the more threatened her family became. Her confidence irritated them. Her happiness offended them. Her smile made them whisper, as if joy was a crime. One evening, her older sister hissed at her, "Who do you think you are? You're acting like someone actually wants you." And for the first time in her life, Amara did not shrink. She simply whispered, "They do." Her sister's face twisted in shock and anger. Something shifted that night. Something dangerous. Something that would soon force Amara to choose between the home she was born into and the love she found outside it. And that choice would come sooner than she ever imagined. The breaking point came on a hot Sunday afternoon. Amara returned home from the bookshop humming softly, something she rarely did. Miss Liora had given her a small handmade bracelet, saying, "For the days you forget your worth, let this remind you." She held it tightly as she stepped into the house. But the moment her mother saw the bracelet, her face darkened. "Where did you get that from? Who is giving you things?" Amara tried to explain gently, but her mother cut her off with a slap so sudden that the bracelet flew from her hand and landed on the floor. "You think strangers love you more than your own family?" her mother shouted. "You think they care about you? Foolish child." Her siblings watched from the doorway, laughing. Amara bent down to pick up the bracelet, her fingers trembling. When she lifted her head, tears blurred her sight. But this time, they were not tears of pain. They were tears of clarity. For the first time, she saw the people in her home for who they truly were. Not protectors, not guardians, not family. Just individuals who enjoyed breaking what they did not build. And she suddenly understood something Miss Liora once told her. Blood may connect you, Amara, but love is what makes someone your family. That night, Amara packed her few belongings into a nylon bag. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She simply walked out of the house barefoot, her heart beating with a strange sense of freedom. She walked straight to the bookshop. Miss Liora, who was closing for the night, froze when she saw her. "My child, what happened?" Amara didn't answer. She simply walked into her arms, and Miss Liora held her like she had been waiting her whole life to do so. That hug was the beginning of Amara's second life. Miss Liora took her in without hesitation. She gave her a room, a bed, warm meals, and something she had never tasted before, peace. Soon, the tailor who always waved at her began dropping food. The orange seller visited to pray for her. The security guard bought her notebooks for school. The bus conductor brought her home safely every day. One by one, the strangers who once offered little kindnesses became something larger, something that stitched themselves together into a safety net under her feet. Where her family failed, the world stepped in. Where her mother cursed her, women who barely knew her blessed her. Where her father ignored her, men who had no obligation to her looked out for her like protectors. Amara, the girl who grew up starving for affection, was now surrounded by so much love she didn't know where to keep it. But the true miracle came years later. When she graduated top of her university class and stood on stage holding her certificate, she scanned the crowd. Not one member of her biological family was there. Instead she saw the orange seller crying loudly, the tailor fanning herself with pride, the security guard shouting her name, the bus conductor waving both hands, and Miss Liora standing in the center of them all, smiling like a mother whose child had crossed a river she wasn't meant to survive. In that moment, Amara's voice trembled as she gave her speech. To the people who showed me that home is not always where you are born, but where you are loved, thank you for teaching me how to live again. The hall erupted, and somewhere deep inside her chest, something healed forever. Amara learned love from strangers, but in the end, those strangers became the family she had always prayed for.